Welcome to the War Academy, fellow commanders, a new YouTube channel designed to make you into a better player and prepare you for tournament play. Today, we're going to go over 10 mistakes that people make all the time and are completely unaware they're even doing it. And we're going to try to make sure that you don't fall into any of these traps. These traps can cost you an important game or just make you look like an idiot. Reason you suck, number one, you don't know what you want. A lot of the problems people have is they just don't know what it is they want their list to do. So I get it if you love your little flyer plane and you love to bring it into battle, but sometimes it doesn't belong. Don't put it as your only vehicle in a list of pure infantry. And that's what it basically boils down to. A really good way to get an advantage over your opponent is to nullify a big part of his army before the battle even begins. If you know you're going up against Sisters of Battle and they have a ton of multi-meltas, what happens if you don't bring a single vehicle? Like, they're going to be shooting their multi-meltas into Marines and not getting their point efficiency out of it, therefore shutting down a portion of their list before the game's ever even started. So same with if you were to use a pure vehicle army. Every infantry that you have in that vehicle army is going to be making it easier for your opponent. If you've ever fought against, think you're fighting against Imperial Knights and then it's like, oh, I've got to shoot my bolt guns, and you're like, wow, this feels pointless. You can make that, any army do that, and that's what people need to be careful of. I get it, it's for, you play this game to have fun and everything, but it's not fun when you play something for 3+ hours just to get your butt kicked the whole time. Like, that's not fun for your opponent. It's not fun for you. It's not fun for you to see your favorite units get blown away. And that's what all leads to the mistake number 2, which is you don't know how to build a list. Where a lot of people mess up on this is they act like this is the last game of 40k they're ever going to play. So they have to use all their favorite stuff in this army or they won't have fun. What I recommend doing is make one list a specific way. If you love your fancy dreadnought, put him in a vehicle list, make it work. And if you have your, eradicators that you love so much, put them in another list. You can play them next time. You don't need to do everything in one game. You have plenty more games ahead. Stop thinking like this list is going to be the last list you'll ever make. So my checklist that I go with when I make a list is I like to basically go over certain things to see if I hit those standards, to see if this list can qualify for a take all comers. So the first thing that I always check is how effective are my opponent's guns. I try to measure if my opponent has 10 heavy bolters and he's got 10 multi-meltas. Which of those weapons am I more afraid of, and which ones am I shutting down? If I'm playing an Imperial Knight list, or I've got a Dreadnought list that's just got all Dreadnoughts and Rhinos, like those heavy bolters aren't that scary compared to those multi-meltas. Versus if I play a Blood Angels list that has just tons of boots on the ground, or a giant Catachan list with 100 guardsmen, like I don't care about those multi-meltas because I have nothing for those multi-meltas to shoot at. So I like to know what it is I'm afraid of before I am actually done with my list. So I also like to know what secondaries will people take against my list. So I just pretend you're fighting against the list you just made. What secondaries would you take against it? So then I like to always make sure, do I have enough anti-infantry and do I have enough anti-tank? So the standard that I like to do for anti-infantry is, can I kill a squad of 9 Scarabs or a squad of 20 Necron Warriors or a squad of 10 Intercessor Marines? So if you just math hammer out basically what you'll know what your anti-infantry guns are and what your anti-tank guns are, hopefully, or you need more help than this video is going to give you, but figure out what it is that you're effective at killing and what it is you're not effective at killing, and try to substitute more. If you can't kill a Mortarion in turn 1, or by God's, at least the next time you go, you're going to struggle and you're going to run into a gigantic huge list or a Tyranid player that's running 3 Dimacharions, and you're not going to know what to do with yourself. Then after I've got it figured out what I'm weak against, I like to figure out how good am I at grabbing objectives. So a lot of people do focus too much on secondaries. The primaries are what win you the game, people. Like, this is a game of fight on the flag. If you've played Call of Duty and those capture the points, or World of Warcraft or Wrathy Basin, like the objectives are key. The objectives win you the game. You max out a secondary every time you score 15 points on your opponent. So when I make a list, I like to make sure I at least have a minimum of 2 units that I believe can run 2 objectives that my opponent wants. So if, for example, if there are 3 objectives in the middle of the field, I want a minimum of 2 things that will get up there, sit on it, that are really cheap. Things I do not care if these things die. For example, Sisters of Battle Dominion that just run up there for 60 points, form a line, and now when it's my turn, I have to kill everything that you got to an objective, because if I don't, you're going to get 5 points for it. Now the downside to this is you're going to give your opponent an easy charge. If there's an objective right in the middle of the field and you run towards it, and then you're probably going to be about 2 inches behind it, so you're about 14 inches away from where your opponent started. And at 14 inches, even a 5-inch moving Terminator only needs a 9-inch charge to get on you and then take that objective from you, which is why you need to be sure of what is your front line and what is your back line. A really easy way to shut down melee armies, especially in this edition with there being so much of them, is to make sure that your opponent's heavy hitters charge things that you don't care about, so you get the charge. If I'm Chaos player and I put a bunch of cultists and I get them up in front on that objective, force you to charge into them, then you're not going to be able to get past them, and guess whatever it was you charged into those cultists is going to get countercharged by my heaviest hitters. And that's why I think it's really important to make sure every list can get to objectives first turn. Things like sentinels, things like scouts, and cursors are awesome for this. Don't try to fight over the hottest one. Try to figure out which one do you think your opponent is going to go for the least, and I like to put those insignificant units on there, make him deal with them. You can be very in control of what it is your opponent shoots in your army, and the more control you have over a game, the more control you have over your opponent, and the more likely you are to win. Now, if you have vehicles in your army and you have infantry in your army, it is still okay. I usually try to make it so either A, I'm expecting one or the other to just die right away, or B, I'm putting them into reserve. For example, if I have a bunch of Marines and Rhinos, then I'm not going to want Marines that aren't in Rhinos. I'm going to take things like Dreadnoughts or other vehicles so that my army will approach as a pure vehicle list. Then when I'm ready, and once I've dealt with the anti-infantry threats or whatever are in those Rhinos, that's when they come out and my army switches into an infantry army. They said nullifying a lot of your opponent's stuff first is a really, really important thing that a lot of people overlook. Next reason people suck at 40k is a pretty hard one to fix. Mainly it comes down to do your homework. So if you're playing 40k, you need to be on YouTube. You need to be doing exactly what you guys are doing right now, and that's research ways to make yourself better. And the thing that's kind of a bummer is it always seems that the people that need help the most at 40k don't ever do any homework outside of 40k. And the people that need help the least are the people that are already going on YouTube, researching, figuring out ways to get better. It's kind of like when you have a band and you have that one guy who doesn't practice, and he only practices at band practice, basically holds everybody else back, and you look at him like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Like, we don't play 40k because it's easy. We play it because it's difficult. We love it because it's difficult and it's ever evolving. But if you don't want to keep up on that, if you don't have the time to go on and research how to play your army better, they have other games. There's Magic the Gathering and Star Wars that are there's a lot bigger casual groups for those type of games. 40k it's a brain game, and that's why we love it. And it's fun to have those really close matches with people where it's down to the wire and you won because of that knowledge. Number 4, you don't move correctly. I'd say the biggest thing that separates a really good 40k player and a really amateur 40k player is how they move all their units on the battlefield. And you can tell by turn 1 basically how experienced your opponent is by how tightly he's moving his models, as in he knows where they're going to be next turn. He knows what they're going to be charging next turn. And if you're just moving stuff around, like even if you have a gunboat, if you're just moving it around for the sake of, I just want to shoot stuff, that's not effective. Always be looking at, I'm moving them here because next turn I want to be here. And if you guys have ever played any game where you capture objectives, fight on the point. Fight on the point. Like, get as much stuff to the point as you can. Stop fighting in these stupid alleys or over this dumb ruin that doesn't have anything in it. You win the game by having models on a point. And yes, an OBSEC model can steal all that from you, but go ahead, bring an OBSEC near the amount of stuff that I'm going to have on my points. Like, they're going to die. So troops are the worst thing in the game for a reason, and that's why they had to give them OBSEC. So fight on the points. Don't get straight off. Your opponent, well, good opponents will try to pull you away from objectives. I just sit there. Like, even if I have no guns, I win the game by sitting on this point, and all I do is try to make a wall to prevent you from getting to that point. And it all comes down to movement. It doesn't matter how offensive I am or how defensive I am. I have to know how to move that unit to basically make them the biggest pain I can for my opponent. And I'd say movement is probably the most difficult thing to teach somebody. It's all about looking ahead and knowing where you want to be later, not where you want to be now. You don't know how to shoot things. So the rule of thumb that I like to use when I start my shooting phase is I like to start with my biggest guns first. Because one, I want to have that CP ready if I need to reroll one of those. And two, any stratagem, it kind of sets up the whole shooting phase. So a mistake that I see people use is they shoot their little guns. They're like, oh, these bolt guns are right next to all these gaunts, so I'm just going to shoot these bolt guns and these gaunts because this will be effective. And then they shoot their multi-meltas, and they leave that dreadnought at 1 wound left. Or they left this thing at just almost dead, and it's like, man, if I've had those bolt guns, I could take down this 300 point unit right now, but instead I got to kill some gaunts. And that's a big mistake people do. So start with your biggest guns, then move to your littlest guns. Don't do this, like I see a lot of people do this left to right thing. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. It makes you look dumb. So big guns first, then smaller guns. Also, don't be so quick to shoot things on objectives, guys. Like, when you shoot at a unit off an objective and you kill them and wipe them off the objective, that's not something to really be happy about. That's something to grumble about, because you just basically are playing scorched earth. Like, you just, if I can't have it, nobody can have it. So that doesn't help you, and it doesn't help your opponent. It's a clean wash. If your opponent has something on the objective, charge what they have on the objective. Like, that's how you do it. Don't shoot things. I don't know why people do that all the time. If you have to, if you can't charge something to it, shoot it off. But that probably means you made your list wrong. Next mistake that people make because they suck is they don't realize how much stratagems they're going to need. I know we have extra stratagems this edition, and it feels like we've got plenty, but you should be prepared to know how much your army's going to need. For example, a lot of people crap on the Baneblade and think, why would I want a Baneblade when I could just take tank commanders? And yes, the tank commander is totally better, but when you think about it, tank commanders using that maximum shot stuff every turn, plus they're usually sucking up to about 2 CP minimum a turn, sometimes more. And in one turn of using a tank commander, if you use a command reroll, I mean, there's 3 CP right there. That's the cost of the Baneblade. So people are quick to not figure out how much CP their army is actually going to need. And I find a lot of people where they're out of CP at the end of turn 3, and it's like, dude, did you not know how much you were going to need? And that comes back to list building. If you're a Necron player and you've got those awesome new little destroyer models with the whirly blades, like, those are cool to put in your army, but just remember, you're probably going to spend a CP every turn, and sometimes twice a turn, because it's per phase, to make those things -1 to be wounded. And that's a huge CP sink for your army. So when you add something to your list, make sure you know how much CP it's going to cost to run that unit. Make sure you don't go overboard. And that's why I like to I always take a scrap piece of note paper and I write down every stratagem, even if I have the cards, of what I'm going to use. It just helps me remember and helps me be prepared for what are the stratagem that this army specifically needs. I mean, if it helps me, I'm sure it can help you guys. Number 7, you deploy wrong. There are two types of players in 40k. There are the proactive ones and the reactive ones. You need to know which one are you. Are you a more defensive player or are you a more aggressive player? Me personally, I tend to be more aggressive and more proactive, not in offensive wise for my army, but in objective grab. I am an objective whore where I just care about controlling those, and I don't care what you have over there, I'm getting there because I deployed to make sure that I get there. And I know I have assisting units, I have covering fire, I have things to kind of move around depending on what needs the support or not, but I don't try to fight my enemy. My enemy's just in my way. And that's a really good way to think of it. And when you, especially when you're building your army to play in your army, to shooting with your stuff, to what it is you're going to charge, figure out how are you going to do what it is you're doing. And it all comes down to how you deployed your army. If he's deployed on the right, he is not going to be able to help the objective on the far left of the map. Same with the slow units to getting to your enemy's deployment zone. Like, deploy correctly with what things want to do, because that's going to set up everything in your battle plan comes off of that deployment. So don't look too much at your opponent. I know I should, but I don't look at my opponent much when he deploys. He can put his stuff wherever. I really don't care because my stuff's going to do what it's going to do. If he puts a tank somewhere, like, I'll be mindful of long line of sight things, but otherwise, that's how I build my lists. Number 8, you think the dice matter a lot more than they do. So one mistake I hear, complaint I hear is, oh, I lost this game because my dice were just bad. His dice were just good. Like, no, honestly, you probably didn't build your army to make up for the fact that your ideas can fail. If you have a deep strike charge that you were relying on, and it's only a 60% chance, say, to get that charge because of buffs or whatnot, you got to remember that that's not 100%. And this is super, super important to always focus on and think about, because when you do a tournament, if you plan on doing tournaments, that's like 4 to 6 games in a row with the same army. So if you fail this thing 1 out of 3 times, that should be 2 times in the tournament that fails for you. But guess what? That's not how it works. It's 3 or 4. And you guys that go to tournaments, you understand what I'm saying. Like, it's always worse. So if you prepare for the worst, and if I figure I'm always rolling 3s. I'm always rolling a little bit below average on what I need to do. Will my plan still work? Then it's a good plan usually. But don't blame the dice. Like, the dice are just dice. Like, they don't matter as much as a lot of people think. And don't ever blame your loss on a dice, because it just looks bad. One thing I wanted to just kind of include that I wouldn't say it's a necessity, but try to focus on the fun parts of Warhammer. And that doesn't, you could still have a really competitive game and have a ton of fun. Do things like write down jokes about your army beforehand, or, things that you can say that are going to make your opponent laugh. Make your opponent want to come back and play you. Like, that's the best part. Building that friend circle, getting lots of people to play against, making it so, like, if people want to play 40k, like, you're the first person they call, because games against you are always awesome. If you're better than your opponent, coach him. If you see people struggling, point them to resources that helped you. That's really what makes you stand out as a 40k player. And you don't have to be the best player in the world, but you can be the most popular player at your local gaming store. And that's just something that, I always like to think about. Also, it makes the game healthier. Don't be cancerous because you're trying to win too hard. And that is not the point of this video. It's a fun game to play, but it's really fun to play when 2 titans go up to each other and fight head to head. Number 10. Most common reason why every one of you suck is because you're not the smartest person in the world. If you are the smartest person in the world, congratulations, you don't ever need to watch YouTube again. But for the rest of us, the easiest way to get good at Warhammer is to just copy what the pros are doing. The smartest people in the world are the people that are really good at memorizing things that other smart people do, because it's a big time saver. And this is so true with almost everything in life. Somebody out there has done it better than you could ever do it by yourself. So copy them, keep working on your what it is you're doing, and then start to make it your own. I'm not saying just plagiarize lists and that's the way to winning 40k, but learn how the pros are winning, play what they play, then start to tweak it. Figure out, oh, I'm more comfortable if I have this unit in there, or I kind of like this play style. But if you understand what that list is doing, you understand alternative ways that that list can do it. And that's why you won't really ever find a Warhammer army that's exactly like another one. There's always nuanced differences, even when one army is just running the meta. What do you guys think? Are any of these mistakes something that you found yourself falling into? Is there any mistakes that you've learned that have created kind of a eureka moment where now you've realized that, wow, if I just think of it this way, it goes a lot easier? I could honestly make a full video on each one of these points. If that's something you guys would like to hear, let me know. Otherwise, thank you for listening to me rant about why you suck. And if you guys believe that watching YouTube videos and doing online research is a big fundamental part of Warhammer, then please hit that subscribe button. I'm a brand new channel. I just started here. I could use all the help I can get. If you're a fan, if you learned anything, please subscribe. And class dismissed.